The night sky above Earth shimmered with stars, as it always had, but tonight, a faint streak of silver broke through the darkness. It wasn't a shooting star or a piece of space debris, it was Ivira's pod. Small and delicate, much like its occupant, the craft descended with an almost ethereal grace, touching down in a secluded forest clearing. Ivira, a Volition scout, stepped out of her pod, her feet barely leaving impressions in the soft soil. At barely 3 feet tall, she looked fragile but carried herself with the elegance of someone accustomed to command. Her shimmering, translucent skin reflected the moonlight, and her silver hair floated as if underwater. Her wide, lavender eyes scanned her surroundings with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "This is Earth," she murmured, her voice soft yet resonant, as if the forest itself paused to listen. Attached to her shoulder was Luminar, her bioorganic translator, a pulsing orb of light that emitted faint hums. Atmosphere compatible. Oxygen levels sufficient. Caution advised. Proximity to human habitation detected. Ivira nodded. Her mission was to observe humans, a species that Volitions had only recently discovered. The Council of Elders on her home planet viewed humans as an anomaly, chaotic yet creative, primitive yet deeply emotional. Ivira's task was to determine if this volatile species could be allies, or if they posed a threat to the galactic order. She adjusted her cloak, a flowing garment that sparkled like the Milky Way, and ventured deeper into the forest. The air was rich with scents, earthy moss, blooming flowers, and the faint tang of distant rain. She felt a twinge of excitement. This planet was alive in a way Velis wasn't. Earth's vibrant energy pulsed through her senses, intoxicating and overwhelming. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush made her pause. Ivira tensed, her fingers brushing the small energy shield strapped to her wrist. Her heart raced as the noise grew closer. Then, a creature emerged, not a human, but a fox. It stopped to sniff the air, its amber eyes locking onto hers. "What a curious being," Ivira whispered. She crouched to its level, offering her hand. The fox approached cautiously, then nuzzled her palm. Ivira smiled, a small, fleeting expression that illuminated her face. For a moment, she felt a connection, pure and untainted by fear or suspicion. But her peace was short-lived. A sudden burst of light illuminated the forest, followed by the unmistakable hum of an engine. Ivira darted behind a tree, her cloak blending seamlessly with her surroundings. Peering out, she saw a human vehicle, a truck, rumbling down a dirt path. 2 figures emerged, carrying lanterns. "Did you see that light earlier?" one of them asked, a man with a thick beard. "Could have been a meteor." "Or some fancy drone," replied the other, a woman with a sharp voice. "Let's check it out." Ivira's heart pounded. She hadn't anticipated humans finding her so quickly. Her training kicked in. She activated a small holographic display on her wrist, scanning the humans for signs of hostility. Their body language seemed relaxed, but their curiosity was palpable. The humans moved closer to her pod, their lantern beams bouncing off its sleek surface. Ivira clenched her fists. If they discovered the pod, they might take it apart, or worse, use it to find her. She couldn't risk it. Luminar chimed softly. "Suggestion. Initiate diversion protocol." With a quick flick of her wrist, Ivira sent a pulse of energy toward a distant tree. It crackled and sparked, drawing the humans' attention. "What the? Did you see that?" the woman exclaimed, pointing toward the glowing tree. "Yeah. Let's check it out." As they hurried away, Ivira slipped out of hiding and approached her pod. She activated its cloaking mechanism, causing it to shimmer and vanish from sight. Satisfied, she retreated deeper into the forest, her thoughts racing. Humans were more alert and resourceful than she'd anticipated. She would need to be careful. Yet, as much as they frightened her, they also intrigued her. Their curiosity wasn't unlike her own, though it seemed reckless and unchecked. Eventually, she found a quiet spot by a stream. The water sparkled under the moonlight, and the gentle babble calmed her nerves. She sat on a moss-covered rock, her legs dangling over the edge. "Humans," she murmured, her voice tinged with both dread and fascination. "What strange creatures." Luminar floated beside her, its glow dimming to a soft pulse. "Mission success probability, 67%. Recommend establishing observation post." Ivira nodded, gazing at the reflection of the stars in the water. Despite her apprehension, she felt a spark of determination. She was here for a reason. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on. For now, though, she allowed herself a moment of quiet wonder, the alien in a world of humans, beginning her journey into the unknown. The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of the forest, painting the ground with dappled golden light. Ivira stirred from her resting place atop a patch of moss, her translucent skin glowing faintly in the dawn's light. Luminar hovered nearby, emitting a gentle hum as it scanned the surrounding area. Local time, 7:15 a.m., the translator announced. Human activity within 200 meters. Caution advised. Ivira stretched, her delicate frame barely making a sound as she rose. She had spent the night contemplating her next move. Staying hidden in the forest forever wasn't feasible. She needed to find a way to observe humans more closely without drawing attention to herself. Following a faint trail through the trees, Ivira came across a peculiar structure. It was a greenhouse, its glass walls gleaming in the sunlight. Inside, an array of plants flourished, their vibrant colors and intricate shapes unlike anything she had seen before. Curiosity tugged at her. She approached cautiously, her eyes wide with wonder. The greenhouse was surrounded by a small garden, bursting with wildflowers. Ivira knelt beside a patch of lavender, its scent filling the air. She reached out to touch the delicate petals, marveling at their softness. "This place is beautiful," she whispered. Before she could explore further, the sound of footsteps reached her ears. Startled, Ivira darted behind a cluster of tall ferns, her heart racing. Peeking through the leaves, she saw a human emerge from the greenhouse. The human was a woman with sun-kissed skin and a warm, inviting smile. Her hair was pulled back into a loose braid, and she wore overalls stained with soil. In her hands, she carried a watering can, humming softly to herself as she tended to the plants. Ivira watched, transfixed. The human moved with care, her touch gentle as she poured water over the flowers. There was something captivating about her, an aura of kindness that put Ivira at ease despite her initial fear. Suddenly, the human stopped humming and turned her head, her eyes scanning the garden. "Hello. Is someone there?" Ivira froze, her mind racing. Had she made a sound? The human stepped closer, her gaze falling on the patch of lavender where Ivira had knelt moments before. "Strange. I could have sworn I heard something." Luminar whispered in Ivira's ear, "Risk of detection, high. Recommend evasive action." But before Ivira could retreat, the human crouched down, her eyes locking onto the small footprints Ivira had left in the dirt. Her brow furrowed in confusion. "What kind of animal makes footprints like these?" the human murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Ivira knew she had to act fast. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out from her hiding spot, her shimmering cloak glinting in the sunlight. The human gasped, her eyes widening as she took in the sight of the tiny alien girl standing before her. "Don't be afraid," Ivira said, her voice soft and melodic. She held up her hands to show she meant no harm. The human blinked, her expression shifting from shock to curiosity. What are you?" "My name is Ivira," she replied, choosing her words carefully. "I come from far away. I mean no harm to you or your world." For a moment, there was silence. Then the human smiled, a genuine, heartfelt expression that warmed Ivira's apprehensive heart. "I'm Serial," she said, extending a hand. "You're incredible. Are you lost?" Ivira hesitated, then reached out to lightly touch Serial's hand. The human skin was warm and calloused, a stark contrast to Ivira's cool, smooth touch. "Not lost," she said. "Observing. Learning." "Well, you've come to the right place," Serial said with a laugh. "I've got plenty to show you if you're interested. These plants are my life's work." Serial led Ivira into the greenhouse, her excitement bubbling over as she explained each plant's unique properties. Ivira listened intently, her awe growing with every word. Serial's passion was infectious, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, Ivira felt a sense of connection. "This one's my favorite," Serial said, pointing to a vibrant red flower with petals that curled like flames. "It's called a fire lily. Beautiful, isn't it?" Ivira nodded, her lavender eyes glowing softly. "Your world, it's filled with such life. On my planet, everything is structured, controlled. This is chaos." But it's beautiful chaos. Serial chuckled. That's humans for you. We're a mess, but we mean well. Most of the time, anyway. Their conversation flowed easily, and Ivira found herself relaxing in Serial's presence. She was surprised by how much she enjoyed the humans' company. Serial's kindness and enthusiasm were a stark contrast to the fear and suspicion Ivira had anticipated. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ivira realized she didn't want to leave. Serial had offered her not only shelter but also a glimpse into the beauty of human life. For the first time, Ivira wondered if her mission was about more than just observation. Perhaps, she thought, there was something here worth staying for. The days that followed Ivira's arrival at Serial's greenhouse were a blend of discovery and confusion. Serial had taken to introducing Ivira to more aspects of human life, from the local wildlife to the nearby village. Though Serial kept Ivira's presence a secret, claiming her as a foreign friend studying botany, the little alien couldn't help but feel the weight of human curiosity. Today was a particularly lively day in the village. Banners fluttered in the breeze, music spilled into the streets, and the scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the crisp air. Serial had explained it was a festival celebrating the harvest, a time for the community to come together and rejoice. Ivira had been reluctant to come, but Serial insisted. "It's harmless fun," Serial had said with a grin. "Plus, I think you'll like it. It's a chance to see the good side of humans." Now, as Ivira stood at the edge of the bustling square, she wasn't so sure. Humans milled about, laughing, dancing, and chatting with a level of energy that made her feel overwhelmed. "Stay close," Serial said, sensing Ivira's hesitation. She gently placed a hand on the alien girl's shoulder, offering reassurance. Ivira nodded, her wide lavender eyes scanning the crowd. Humans were such expressive creatures, their faces constantly shifting with emotion. It was fascinating but also exhausting to keep up with. As they moved through the square, a man approached them, his confident stride and wide grin instantly putting Ivira on edge. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a mop of unruly dark hair and an air of arrogance that seemed to announce itself before he even spoke. "Serial," he exclaimed, spreading his arms. "You've brought a friend. How delightful." "This is Ivira," Serial said, her tone polite but guarded. "She's visiting from very far away." The man's eyes lit up as he took in Ivira's unique appearance. "I've never seen anyone like you before," he said, leaning closer. "Where are you from, little one?" Ivira stiffened. "Far beyond the stars," she said cautiously, her voice firm despite her unease. "Exotic and mysterious," the man said with a chuckle. "I'm Darren. And you, my dear, have just made this festival far more interesting." Ivira didn't like the way he looked at her, as if she were some rare treasure to be claimed. Serial must have noticed too, because she quickly stepped between them. "We were just passing through, Darren. Enjoy the festival." But Darren wasn't so easily deterred. "Wait. Serial. Don't be so hasty. I was just about to suggest Ivira join the dance." He gestured to the open square where couples spun in time to the lively music. "It's tradition, after all. A way to welcome newcomers." "I don't," Ivira began, but before she could finish, Darren had taken her hand, his grip firm. "Don't be shy," he said with a wink. "It's just a dance." Panic surged through Ivira as Darren led her to the square. The music swelled, and the crowd clapped in rhythm, cheering them on. Ivira's heart raced. Volitions didn't have physical customs like this. The idea of touching, let alone dancing, with another being was utterly foreign to her. Luminar buzzed urgently in her ear. "Warning: high stress levels detected. Recommend immediate disengagement." But Ivira was frozen, unsure how to extricate herself without causing a scene. Darren twirled her around, his laughter grating on her nerves. She stumbled, her small frame no match for his enthusiastic movements. "Relax," Darren said, oblivious to her discomfort. "It's all in good fun." Serial, watching from the sidelines, saw the distress in Ivira's eyes. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, cutting through the crowd. "All right, Darren, that's enough," she said firmly, pulling Ivira away. Darren raised his hands in mock surrender. All right. Didn't mean any harm." Ivira clung to Serial's arm as they walked away, her breathing shallow. That was awful, she said, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry, Serial said, her expression full of guilt. I shouldn't have brought you here. Humans can be overwhelming sometimes. Why do they act like that? Ivira asked, her voice tinged with frustration. So loud, so invasive. On Velis, personal space is sacred. We don't touch unless absolutely necessary. Serial sighed. Humans are complicated. We crave connection, and sometimes we don't think about how our actions affect others. Darren's the type who thinks he's charming when he's really just annoying. Ivira shook her head. It's more than that. Your kind seems driven by emotions. Everything you do, every decision you make, it's all tied to how you feel. It's chaotic. Serial nodded thoughtfully. You're not wrong. Humans are emotional creatures. It's both our greatest strength and our biggest flaw. But not all of us are like Darren. Some of us value quiet, thoughtful connections. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of fireworks. Ivira flinched as colorful explosions lit up the sky, their booming echoes reverberating through the square. It's just fireworks, Serial said gently. They're harmless. Beautiful, aren't they? Ivira watched the lights dance across the night sky, her initial fear giving way to awe. They are, she admitted softly. Serial smiled. Maybe humans aren't so bad after all. Ivira glanced at her, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Perhaps. But I still have much to learn. As the festival continued around them, Ivira began to see glimpses of what Serial had described. The joy, the camaraderie, the beauty in the chaos. It was confusing and overwhelming, but it was also strangely compelling. For the first time, Ivira wondered if her mission wasn't just about observing humans but about understanding them, and maybe even understanding herself in the process. The forest at twilight was a symphony of sounds, crickets chirping, leaves rustling, and the distant call of an owl. Ivira sat on the mossy edge of the stream near Serial's greenhouse, her legs tucked beneath her. The cool, earthy scent of the water mingled with the faint aroma of wildflowers. She had grown to appreciate this place, a small haven of tranquility amidst the chaos of human life. But tonight, she wasn't at ease. The events of the festival lingered in her mind, stirring emotions she couldn't quite name. Ivira gazed at her reflection in the water, her lavender eyes wide with thought. Serial approached quietly, holding 2 steaming cups of tea. I thought you could use this, she said, handing one to Ivira before sitting beside her. Thank you, Ivira said softly, cradling the warm cup in her hands. She sniffed it cautiously, detecting hints of honey and mint. Serial had been teaching her about human foods and drinks, a process that fascinated Ivira despite her initial reluctance. For a while, they sat in silence, the gentle babble of the stream filling the space between them. Then Serial spoke. You've been quiet since the festival, she said, her voice gentle. Do you want to talk about it? Ivira hesitated, her fingers tightening around the cup. It's difficult to explain. Humans are so different from Velisians. Your emotions, your actions, they're unpredictable. I don't know how to navigate your world. Serial nodded, her expression thoughtful. That's fair. Humans can be a lot to handle, especially for someone who isn't used to us. But you handled yourself well, considering. I didn't feel like I handled anything, Ivira admitted. Darren's behavior, it was intrusive and overwhelming. On Velis, such actions would be considered a violation. Yet here, it seems normal. Serial sighed. Darren's behavior wasn't okay, even by human standards. Some people just don't think about how their actions affect others. But that doesn't mean all humans are like that. Ivira looked at her, her wide lavender eyes searching Serial's face. You're different, she said after a moment. You're kind. Patient. You don't push or invade. Why? Serial smiled, a warm, genuine expression that made Ivira's heart flutter, a strange and unfamiliar sensation. Because I want you to feel safe, she said simply. You trusted me enough to show yourself, to let me into your world, even if just a little. The least I can do is respect that trust. The words struck a chord in Ivira. Trust was not a concept Velisians explored deeply. On her planet, everything was structured, predictable, and devoid of the emotional complexities that defined human interactions. Yet here she was, sitting beside a human who had shown her nothing but kindness and understanding. "I don't fully understand your world," Ivira said after a moment, her voice soft. "But I think I want to try." Cyril's smile widened. "That's all anyone can do, try. And you don't have to do it alone. I'll help you, Ivira. We'll figure this out together." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Ivira felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps humans weren't as chaotic and frightening as she had thought. Perhaps there was beauty in their complexity, a depth of connection that Volitions had never experienced. As they sipped their tea, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Cyril told Ivira stories about her childhood, her love for plants, and the dreams that had led her to create the greenhouse. Ivira, in turn, shared glimpses of Velis, its crystal cities, its serene oceans, and the structured harmony that governed her people's lives. "I can't imagine a world without chaos," Cyril said with a laugh. "It sounds peaceful but also a little boring." Ivira tilted her head, considering the comment. "It is peaceful, but you're right, it can be dull. There's no room for spontaneity, no surprises. Everything is planned, calculated." "Well," Cyril said, her eyes twinkling with mischief, "maybe a little chaos isn't so bad after all." Their laughter echoed through the forest, a sound that felt oddly natural to Ivira. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax, to enjoy the moment without overanalyzing it. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Cyril leaned back, gazing up at the vast expanse. "Do you miss your home?" she asked softly. Ivira's smile faded, her expression turning contemplative. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But Velis never felt like home in the way this place does. Here, everything is alive, unpredictable. It's overwhelming, but it's also exhilarating." Cyril turned to her, her gaze steady. "Maybe Earth can be your home too. If you want it to be." Ivira didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked up at the stars, the same stars she had gazed at on Velis. They seemed closer here, brighter, as if urging her to take a step she hadn't yet dared to consider. "Perhaps," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Cyril smiled, sensing the shift in Ivira's resolve. "One step at a time," she said, her voice warm with encouragement. Ivira nodded, a small but genuine smile gracing her lips. For the first time, the idea of staying didn't feel so frightening. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a place among these chaotic, emotional beings. And perhaps in doing so, she would discover a part of herself she never knew existed. "You said." Over the next few weeks, Ivira and Cyril grew closer. Each day brought new lessons, shared laughter, and quiet moments of understanding. Cyril introduced Ivira to more of human life, how to bake bread, the joy of music, and even the art of storytelling by a crackling fire. In return, Ivira shared fragments of Velis, her people's intricate philosophies, the precision of their technology, and the quiet beauty of their structured existence. But as their bond deepened, so did Ivira's fears. Volitions were not meant to form attachments, especially with beings so unpredictable as humans. Yet Cyril's kindness had become an anchor in Ivira's chaotic new reality. She felt drawn to the human in a way that defied logic, a feeling that both exhilarated and terrified her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in fiery hues, Ivira stood on the greenhouse's rooftop. From this vantage point, the village lights twinkled like distant stars, and the forest stretched out like an endless sea of green. Luminar hovered beside her, its soft hum a comforting presence. "Analyzing emotional state," Luminar said, its mechanical voice breaking the silence. Confusion detected. "Would you like assistance in processing?" "No," Ivira replied softly. "This is something I need to figure out on my own." Just then, Cyril climbed onto the roof, her presence as steady as ever. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, carrying 2 mugs of tea. Ivira nodded, and Cyril sat beside her, the warmth of her presence a stark contrast to the cool evening air. They sipped their tea in silence for a while, the world around them settling into a peaceful rhythm. "You've been quiet lately," Cyril said, her tone gentle. "Is everything okay?" Ivira hesitated. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "Your world is so different from mine. The emotions, the connections, it's overwhelming. And yet, I find myself drawn to it." "To you?" Cyril's eyes softened. It's not a bad thing to feel, Ivira. Emotions can be messy, but they're what make life rich and meaningful. They're what make us human. But I'm not human, Ivira said, her voice trembling. I don't even fully understand your emotions, let alone how to navigate them. And yet, I feel something when I'm with you. Something I can't explain. Cyril set her mug down and turned to face Ivira fully. You don't have to explain it, she said. Feelings don't always make sense, and that's okay. What matters is what you choose to do with them. Ivira looked down, her lavender eyes shimmering with uncertainty. On Veles, such feelings would be seen as a distraction, a weakness. But here, they feel like a strength. How can something so confusing be so powerful? Cyril smiled. Because emotions connect us. They remind us that we're not alone, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Their conversation was interrupted by the faint sound of music drifting from the village. Cyril's face lit up. That's the village band. They always practice around this time. Want to take a closer listen? Ivira hesitated, but Cyril's encouraging smile made her nod. Together, they climbed down and walked to a clearing near the village where the music was loud enough to hear without being seen. The melody was lively yet soothing, a blend of instruments Ivira had never encountered. She closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. It was as if the notes wove a story of their own, one filled with joy, sorrow, and hope. Cyril reached out, her hand brushing against Ivira's. Dance with me, she said, her voice soft but inviting. I don't know how, Ivira admitted, her cheeks glowing faintly. Neither do I, Cyril said with a laugh. That's the fun of it. Taking Ivira's hand, Cyril began to sway to the music, her movements unpolished but full of life. Ivira hesitated, then allowed herself to be guided. Slowly, she began to mimic Cyril's movements, her steps tentative but growing bolder with each beat. They danced under the stars, their laughter blending with the music. For Ivira, it was a moment of pure freedom, a release from the rigid constraints of her upbringing. She felt weightless, her worries forgotten as she lost herself in the rhythm. As the song came to an end, they stood still, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. Cyril's hand remained in Ivira's, her gaze steady and warm. You're amazing, you know that, she said softly. Ivira's heart raced, a feeling she was becoming more familiar with in Cyril's presence. You're the amazing one, she replied. You've shown me a world I never thought I could understand. And you've made me feel things I didn't know I was capable of. Cyril smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. You've changed my world too, Ivira. You've reminded me to see the wonder in things I'd taken for granted. I'm glad you're here. In that moment, something shifted between them, a bond formed not through words but through shared understanding. Ivira realized that her connection with Cyril was unlike anything she had ever experienced, a bridge between two worlds that felt as natural as the air she breathed. As they walked back to the greenhouse, hand in hand, Ivira couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe her mission wasn't just about observing humanity. Maybe it was about finding a place where she truly belonged. And maybe, just maybe, that place was here beside Cyril. The greenhouse shimmered in the morning sunlight, its glass panes glowing with golden light. Ivira sat on the wooden bench Cyril had built months ago, her gaze fixed on the garden blooming before her. Each flower seemed to reach for the sky, vibrant and alive, a reflection of the connection Ivira had found with this world, and with Cyril. But today, her thoughts were heavy. The Velisian recall signal had come the night before. A faint, pulsing vibration that only she and Luminar could sense. It was time to return home. Ivira. Cyril's voice broke the silence. Ivira turned to see Cyril standing in the doorway, her soft smile tinged with worry. She held a bundle of fresh herbs in one hand, her other wiping dirt from her palms. You've been out here a while, Cyril said, walking over. Everything okay? Ivira hesitated. She had grown to treasure Cyril's company, the human's presence a comforting constant in her turbulent journey. But now, she didn't know how to say goodbye. I received a signal last night, Ivira said finally, her voice quiet. It's from Veles. They're calling me back. Cyril froze, her smile faltering. You're leaving. Ivira nodded, her hands gripping the edge of the bench. I knew this day would come, but I didn't think it would be so soon. My people need the data I've gathered, the insights I've gained. It's my duty." For a long moment, Serial said nothing. Then she sat beside Ivira, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I knew you weren't here forever," she said softly. "But it doesn't make it any easier." Ivira turned to her, the ache in her chest deepening. "Serial, you've shown me a side of humanity I didn't think existed. You've made me question everything I thought I knew. Leaving this place, leaving you, it feels like I'm leaving part of myself behind." Serial reached out, placing a hand over Ivira's. "And you've changed me too. You've shown me the universe is bigger and more beautiful than I ever imagined. I'll miss you, Ivira. More than words can say." For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of the impending goodbye settling over them like a storm cloud. Then Serial took a deep breath, her expression shifting from sadness to determination. "You don't have to forget this place," Serial said. "Or us. Maybe one day you can come back. Or maybe I'll find a way to visit you." Ivira's lips trembled, a small smile breaking through her sorrow. "That would be incredible. But for now, I need to fulfill my duty. My people won't understand what I've experienced here if I don't return to share it." Serial nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Then let's make your last day here something to remember." The rest of the day was a whirlwind of laughter and memories. Serial took Ivira to her favorite places, the hidden grove where wildflowers grew in abundance, the quiet stream where they had shared countless conversations, and the small hill that offered the best view of the sunset. As the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Serial surprised Ivira with a gift, a small glass pendant filled with pressed petals from the garden. "Something to remind you of this place," Serial said, fastening it around Ivira's neck. "It's beautiful," Ivira said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." When the stars finally dotted the night sky, Ivira knew it was time. Luminar hovered beside her, its soft hum signaling readiness. "Are you sure about this?" Serial asked, her voice trembling. Ivira nodded, though her heart felt heavy. "I must go. But this isn't the end, Serial. I promise you that." Taking a deep breath, Ivira stepped back, her hands glowing faintly as she activated the recall sequence. A soft, otherworldly light enveloped her, and the faint outline of a portal began to shimmer in the air. But before she could step through, Serial closed the distance between them, pulling Ivira into a tight embrace. "Be safe," Serial whispered, her voice breaking. Ivira returned the embrace, her small frame trembling. "Thank you, Serial. For everything." As the light intensified, Ivira stepped into the portal, her form fading into the glow. The last thing she saw was Serial's tearful but determined smile, a vision that would stay with her forever. When Ivira arrived back on Velis, the sterile, orderly environment felt more alien to her than ever before. She submitted her reports, shared her findings, and fulfilled her duty. But no amount of data or analysis could capture the depth of what she had experienced on Earth. Months passed, and Ivira found herself yearning for the unpredictable chaos of humanity. For Serial's laughter. For the warmth of a connection that defied logic and reason. Then, one day, as she sat gazing at the stars from a Velisian observatory, a faint hum filled the air. She turned to see a glowing portal forming behind her. And stepping through it was Serial, her smile radiant, her eyes filled with wonder. "I told you I'd find a way," Serial said, her voice echoing in the silent room. Ivira's heart soared, a rare and beautiful smile spreading across her face. "You really are unstoppable," she said, her voice trembling with joy. As they embraced, two worlds collided once more, not in chaos, but in harmony. And in that moment, Ivira knew she had found her home, not in a place, but in a person.